Welcome to another episode of the Fair Chase podcast. As everybody knows, we're in a special series right now about getting right for deer season. And so selfishly, I decided to start this just because sometimes it's helpful to know what you need to be doing in the summer. It's an important time to get ready for the fall. And selfishly, I thought, well, I'll just grab all the experts I know, pick their brains, and I'll be that better off in the fall. And so I hope that's the case for you too, because it's certainly been the case for me so far. If you followed along so far, we've talked physical training. We've talked physical training with Todd Baumgartner, just how to get your body ready and prepare for deer season. We talked with Chris Derrick from Sitka about how to layer and stay comfortable. As everybody here knows, it's one thing to be comfortable when it's 55 degrees out, but when it's 10 degrees and driving wind and rain and snow or whatever, it makes a difference. So some great stuff so far. But going on the gear, I guess, bent that we're on at this part of the series, I thought after doing your clothing layering, it seems logical to talk about boots next. And so what I wanted to do today is bring Stephen Lathrop on from Lathrop and Sons. So Stephen, thanks again for joining me.
Thank you for having me on.
So I'm going to run through some questions, basically some basics around boots for people right now who are trying to figure out what they need to do for the fall. So there's people that listen to our podcast from all over the country, and so before we jump into some specific questions I have, you want to explain the importance, like why is it important to have a good pair of boots for something like whitetail hunting? Because sometimes people will say, hey, it's just whitetail. I mean, I only walk 500 yards to my stand. Why are boots still important for a guy like that?
Well, really, because as you well know, whitetail season is year round. It's not just going and hanging a stand and hunting. Prior to starting this podcast, we were just talking about failed food plots and replanting food plots, and all that requires effort, walking, doing things like that. So, foot gear as a whole for the whitetail hunter is just as important as it is for the guy that's a western hunter that's doing shed hunting and doing it. When you go full circle with whitetail thing, it's a lot of manpower. It's a lot of boot leather on the ground too. Even if it's low impact scouting, you're still pounding and out doing that. So, and what comes to mind big time for me, because James and I are really avid whitetail guys. We both started, I was 15, James was 14, but so we live this. I mean, walking across frozen fields to get into a stand. I get it. Everyone wears rubber. A lot of guys wear rubber boots, but I think that you can also appreciate the fact that different times of the year, your hunting techniques and the way that you're approaching some of your setups and how far you're going to infiltrate that secret area or how far you're going to edge out dictates how much boot leather's on the ground. But it's super important. And what we need everyone to understand is, because I fall into this on a daily basis with guys, there is not one boot and there is not one boot system that will take you from the beginning of the season to the end. But what we will see, and what we can touch on during this, is it goes full circle, and I think you would agree with me on that. It goes full circle. Your footwear that you're probably going out and trimming out your stands. I don't know how your motor's running, but mine right now, I'm thinking, okay, I'm finishing up the spraying on my food plot. I'm going to go in and I'm going to top dress with some soybeans. We're going to get 4 days of rain. That's it. I'm not wasting any more time going to the next phase of whitetail season, right?
Yep.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Fair Chase podcast. We're going to take a few seconds here to thank a few sponsors that helped make this show possible.
We are big fans of having glass with you when you're in the woods. So whether we're turkey hunting, bear hunting, deer hunting, whatever we're doing, we're bringing some sort of glass. Actually, one of the new fun pieces of glass that we've added to our collection were the UHD 18 by 56s.
Big boys.
I like them because then you don't need to bring a full spotter, and you can still do pretty well.
Yeah.
I like the 2 eyes. So we love Vortex. We use a lot of their optics on our rifles, on our chest when we're
Rangefinders, they got
rangefinders, amazing. So we'll love them. Go check them out. And actually, if you're going to buy some, check out Midway USA and use the promo code TFC10 for 10% off your order. I promise you won't be disappointed. Go check them out, Vortex Optics.
HuntWise is an awesome app. There's a lot of them out there. This one's definitely our favorite. They're local here in Grand Rapids, have their headquarters here. They have an awesome HuntCast 2.0 that's going to give you weather prediction, wind prediction, anything based off the pin and property that you're hunting to give you the best day to get out there and hunt. So it's kind of a no-brainer. Go get this app, huntwise.com.
It's no secret we've been shooting method arrows for a long time. Well, it might be because they used to be called vector arrows. Their method arrows now are super tough, great shooting arrows, great weight. And what's really cool about them is you enter your bow specs in, weight, draw length, all that stuff, and they will send
No more charts.
No more.
Let them deal with it.
The smart dudes who we've had on our show in the past figure it out for you, send you ready to go arrows,
ready to shoot.
Go check them out. Method Archery. We've shot a lot of bows, but for the past 5 or so years, we've been shooting prime bows. Love the way they shoot, super stable. And what we're really excited about, great warranty. And this year they rolled out the RevX series, which is pretty sweet. We've been talking about the different RevXs we're going to be shooting.
And you're going in the 6Y?
I'm deciding to shoot the 36, which is a
the
longer
only
axis,
reason he's choosing the 36
is because I figure the bigger the bow, the bigger the buck. So we're going to test that out. Follow us this year to see if that actually happens. But that's what I'm shooting. You're shooting the RevX 4. Yep. So anyways, we love Prime. Michigan company. Great guys. Go check them out. G5prime.com. We put a lot of miles on whether we're hunting.
Boots.
Yeah, on our boots. Whether it's Alaska out west, even here in Michigan.
Let's just say the muck boots were left in the truck.
Yes. So we need something that's comfortable, that'll keep us dry, that's durable, and actually we like a little stiffer soled when we're hunting from our platform when we're saddle hunting. So we wear Lathrop and Sons boots. I've been wearing the Mountain Hunter Encompass, and yours is the
Mountain Hunter Elite.
Great boots. Great guys from down in Illinois, the Lathrop brothers. Had them on an episode in the past. Go check it out. Go check out their boots, Lathrop and Sons.
If you didn't already know that James and I are saddle hunters, then you do now. And if you don't like it, then go listen to somebody else because we're going to talk about saddles. We wear Trophy Line tree saddles because we think they're awesome. And they come out with some awesome new products all the time. They just came out with the new Venatic saddle that is seriously the best saddle I've ever sat in. And I've sat in quite a bit of them. They also have the new Onyx platform out.
I spent some time on it this fall.
I've spent some time on it. It's pretty sweet. And they're going to continue to come out with sweet products just like those two. So stay tuned to them. They've got social media, trophyline.com. And save yourself 10%. TFC 10.
It's no use having an awesome bow if you don't have great accessories. So sights, stabilizers, things like that. And so that's why we chose to work with Redline Bow Accessories. And so those guys are coming out with amazing new things, whether it be new stabilizers or sights like this. If you're watching on our YouTube or video podcast, this new torch sight. So we're huge fans of this sight. Double pin. You know what? Go check out our past episode with them or check out their website. There's a ton to like about this site. Their stabilizers are great, and actually some of their quivers are incredible.
Yes.
So go check them out. Listen to the last episode we did with them. Oh, and save yourself 10% with the code TFC10.
Yeah, absolutely. And for me, it's, a lot of it's like, well, I got to find a new place to go. I have to go and find new buck hidey holes that I didn't know about. I try to do that every year. I'm hoping to add spots and spots and spots so that come middle of October when my spots seem dry, it's like, oh, I've got this, area that I've kind of identified for later, or I've been saving it. And so, boots are incredibly important. You can think that, a couple 100-yard walk is not that much, but with ill-fitting boots and boots that aren't made for walking, and doing this kind of walking, you pay the price. And I've used all sorts, from great boots to not so great boots, and they make a difference. So, Stephen, when I'm thinking about two different guys in the summer, and we'll start with the first guy. The first guy is the type of guy who's got great boots. Maybe he bought them last year, bought them 2 years ago, or whatever. Doesn't have a lot of miles on them. They seem to be good to go. So this guy's got these pair of boots. Maybe you beat the tar out of him in the fall, in the winter. What are you telling him to do now to get his boots ready for deer season? How should he be maintaining them?
We're doing a lot of talking, and it's coaching, right? And I get it. They didn't go to school to be the boot expert. We need to be pulling those boots out, tugging the laces out of them, taking a upholstery brush or a coarse brush, knocking the dirt, dust off of them, air compressor, blow everything out. The boot has the gusset, which is the tongue that pulls forward, blowing that area out where we got all that weed seed, right? It always collects in there, and the mud and the grit. And normally that tongue and gust area is very thin, so it's kind of fragile. It's a more luxurious, thinner material, so it's conforming to the top of the foot. And you're blowing that out, and then we're going to condition that boot. And I know a lot of people get freaked out about scent and the rest of it, but I don't know. I can't say that that's really ever been a problem for me. Now, I clearly don't try to go out and walk in front of my tree stand.
Right.
I'm thinking I'm going to get a shot, right? I'll kind of slip in the back and go up, and everything's fresh and clean out in front of me. But, conditioning and waxing that leather is ultra important, right? So that's a good start. And hey, why not go ahead while you're at it and pull your insole out of that boot, or whatever aftermarket insole out of that boot, get all the debris out of the toe box area, make sure you don't have any critters or spiders in there.
Yeah, no, I love that. And that's what I've been doing a lot of, spraying some conditioner on there, some waterproofing stuff. We end up doing that throughout the year just because, the summer, like you said, I'm putting a lot of miles on anyways. And everybody listening to this podcast should be putting on miles right now, whether it's working your food plots or, like I said, scouting for new areas. And in a couple of weeks, we're going to bring on someone to talk a little bit about that. But needless to say, like, boots should be a year-round thing you're using. One of those pieces of gear that you're always, you kind of always have it available, because there's really no time where you shouldn't be doing it. So okay, Stephen, so you've got boots, you're maintaining them. How do you know, though, like, sometimes they look raggedy? Like, how do you know when there's time to toss them, or when they're just kind of still good? Like, what things should people look for when they're trying to figure out what to do with their boots?
Well, so here's the first thing, and quite honestly, it's really could be dangerous. If you ran a set of boots and the lugs on the bottom of the boot really started to get rounded from years of wear, we're entrusting a lot. I don't care if you got a harness on or not. You're going up on some of these pegs or screw-in steps or some of these climbing sticks, and a rounded lug on one of those sharp edges on that, it could be a slip, and you might get caught after a 3-foot fall. It's going to scare the heck out of you. Yeah. May slam your head into the step, split your forehead open. So you want to look at the outsole to make sure that the outsole of the boot still has some squared off edge to it, right? That squared off edge is going to have a tendency to grab and provide you a little bit more of a safety feature. The other thing that you can do too is to look at the upper. And the way that we do this is to set the boot on a flat table, work surface, and then squat down behind it, and then visualize the lower plane of the boot. So we're looking at the bottom of the sole, like on that tabletop, and we're looking to see if we're getting the tilt of the upper in and out. And some guys just blow that side out. When you really roll that upper over the side of the sole long enough, you start pulling on the seam tape of the bootie. And the more that you pull on that seam tape, you'll actually lift that seam tape or pop a little spot up. It basically has come delaminated then. Water find a way in and get into the boot. That's essentially how that works. And a lot of people think, oh, that boot's this and that. No, it's usually the seam tape's leak. So looking at these things can have you prepared going into that. Again, the outsole, the wear pattern of the boot, how that affects the comfort of your legs and your knees and your hips, and then that wearing of the boot, just recapping what we're talking about, that wearing of the boot, if you're not careful and you've worn a season like that, you've pulled and strained the upper of the boot, and you can damage it.
Well, and that's I always know when that happens, because the moment that water starts leaking in my boots, it's like that's usually the case, or that's usually what's happening to my boots in the past, when it's like, oh, time to get a new one. I just still think of, this isn't with boots, these are with shoes. A couple years ago, it's my birthday. I think when I turned 30, so this is almost 5 years ago now. And I'm with my brother and my dad. They're like, "Oh, you're getting old." We're standing in the garage. I'm like, "No, I'm not old. I'm in great shape. Check this out." And we have, on a garage door holder, that string that hangs down. So I'm like, "Watch this. I'm going to kick that string. Like, I'm flexible. I'm strong and stable guy." So I get back, I wind up, do the kick. I do an awesome roundhouse kick. Like, it's clean. But right as my foot goes max up, my shoes had no tread on them at the time, and I slipped like Charlie Brown, trying to kick the football, flip back. And so I always think of tread when I remember laying on the ground, because it hurt, and I didn't want to show them how bad it hurt, but it knocked the wind out of me. I'm just like, I think I broke all my ribs. So I'm looking at my shoes, and I see how slick they are, and they're slicks on the bottom, and so how much more important, that's obviously kind of a random example, but like, your boots, you're out there on ice, you're out on wet rocks and things like that. If you have limited tread, it makes a huge, huge difference. You slip all the time. You're carrying your rifle, a bow. You've got your tree stand on your back. Like you said, that actually can get pretty ugly pretty quick.
You think about what I'm saying. You're going into a spot. You didn't have a stand. I'm throwing my situation. I know everyone does it different, and a lot of the guys in the mobile hunting community are definitely doing it different than what I am. But when I go into an area and utilize a quick approach or setup, I'm looking at a spot that I thought I had aced and figured out, and I was 30, 40, 50 yards off, and the wind, I've got to get in there and hunt that area, and I cannot get in there to that stand, or I'm going to screw it all up. So I'll grab 2 or 3 sticks, or I'll grab 3 or 4 really sharp, easy climber screw-in steps that are like brand new and razor sharp, so I know I can just zing up there. But you think about that. You're on, we'll say, that easy climber step on that boot, and that freaking leg is actually, because it's squared, it's going to kind of hook on that edge.
Mm-hmm.
Think of the amount of leverage and pressure your body weight, right, are on those two spots. And let's take it a step farther. Your body weight, and then it's probably making contact in 1.5 inches.
Right.
That's what's really kind of holding you on that to boom, keep from dropping. So it's ultra important.
Okay, so this guy, that we've been helping here, he's decided his boots have holes in the side. It looks like a hobo boot. So he's out looking for boots.
Yeah.
When people are, and obviously I know you're Lathrop and Sons, and you would probably recommend people use your boot. But what are some simple, principles or ideas or things to keep in mind for people when that's like, I need a new boot. I don't really know what to look for. I don't know what I need, in terms of material or quality. So what are some helpful, tips you can give them looking for a new boot?
It is an absolutely great question, and it's something that we as a company and as product developers constantly rack our brain around. From a whitetail hunting standpoint, I would say that there's really 2 different levels that you would look at, but most importantly, for the setup for a guy that's going into hunt from October into the first part of November, right? Uninsulated, waterproof boot, and today with the technologies, companies actually putting a full-length nylon shank in the boot. That has to be number 1. Number 2, the guy has to identify his foot shape, because when you get into a boot that has that full-length nylon shank, the lower level of nylon shank boots don't have a lot of substance to the upper of the boot. They're very accommodative. So the second part's not as important when you get into the level of our boot, where we really select components so that the boot retains its shape. Like you can look at our boot after a year's worth of wear and look at this other boot that has a stiff shank, and you'll see a compressed toe box, and it looks like a rag doll on top of the upper.
Yeah.
Not bashing any other brands. I'm just saying this is what you get, different levels. So you have to make sure that the shape of the shoe matches the shape of the foot. Because when you get into something that does have the stiffness and supports you when you're standing on those pegs, clearly the fit's going to be important in that boot because of its structure and rigidity to the upper, right? So what I'm saying is, you want technical, I'll give you technical. You want performance, I can give you performance. We better make sure that the shape of it matches your foot. If you just want a stiffer platform, so when you're putting the stand up, you can get that, and you can get an EVA midsole, which will flatten out after a year, and you can get an upper that's accommodated because there's no structure, it's just material sewn together.
Yeah.
So I'm going to say either one of those are great and very important, right? For the guy that's doing mountain hunting or mobile hunting. I guess at the end of the day, you know, as passionate as I am with this stuff, archery specifically, I just, because it's my life, it's like I'm going to get the very best that I can get.
Yeah, exactly.
I just am going to do it because I don't want to guess, well, why didn't I get that?
Right.
You know?
Yeah, exactly.
And it's better, but I mean, it's just like, I feel like that if I'm going to devote an entire year to pursuing just whitetail bow hunting, why would I not invest? It's the amount of the investment is so minimal, really, at that point when you run it out over the length of a year. You're shed hunting, being able to go and pursue that specific deer.
Well, it's like you spend all this money and time on clothes and weapons and things that you use for part of the year, but I mean, you're using your boots all the time, and
Absolutely.
I've used and it's also part of picking a boot, I would say, is knowing, what you're spending most of your time doing. So if you are you sheep hunting? Because that requires a very different boot than if you're, spot and stalk mule deer or something like that. One is rocky terrain. One, you're sneaking, you're maybe on a flatter surface. And so, I've tried all sorts of boots, right? I've tried everything from like Solomon's and Salewas to Crispies, and now actually I found kind of what I like in all of testing all these things and what works best for me, and it's the boot that I have right now. It's you guys make, it's the Encompass, which is stiff, but it's somewhat flexible. It kind of helps me. I've realized that I'm not sheep hunting every year or doing those types of hunts all the time, but I am whitetail hunting and going out west every year. And so, how do I find a boot that will take me kind of to both of those places? And so I've kind of found I like somewhat stiff, but a little flex in there too for a little ability to stalk and so on.
And that particular boot was developed to encompass a lot of the western hunting, but still be utilized in the Midwest.
Yeah,
chasing whitetail. The really cool feature with that boot is it utilizes the same midsole. This takes some real effort to engineer this. The midsole of that boot is the same midsole that is put on the Mountain Hunter boot.
Mm-hmm.
It's the same midsole that is put on the Elite boot, but the outsole, not the midsole. The midsole is the polyurethane rubber between the bottom of the boot and the tread, so it's sandwiched in there.
That's that little,
It's red, that's a lighter durometer, that's the firmness, the black is a harder, okay? So when you look at a cutaway of our midsole, you'll see an outline of black with red in the center of it. It's the way it was designed. The reason that we utilize the urethane is it's very resilient, so it absorbs impact. It doesn't have this massive burst of rebound, but it's really durable.
Yeah.
It's a little heavier than EVA. EVA is a very light foam that you would see in a running shoe.
Yeah.
Or it's a foam that I used to use when I was doing build-ups on shoes.
I'll say this about that, that, and by the way, this is a common phrase that's said in my family and it drives me nuts. I just said, I'll say this about that. I'm sorry to say it. But last year I tried to go on a bear hunt with boots that were that type of material. And so I show up and my friend looks at my boots and it's like those aren't going to last. I'm like, no, these will be fine, And I got halfway through the bear hunt, I remember walking down and my boots are shredded at this point, like literally shredded. And I had to go back into town and buy a boot in the middle of a hunt because they were not that tougher exterior.
Literally, if you would take an EVA midsole and wear them side-hilling in a bunch of rocks and into a bunch of thorns like we have in the Midwest, you will look at the side and you'll see where it's just been pecked apart.
Yeah.
And cut up, right? It's lightweight. It's really cheap. Like you can get soling crepe. I mean, if we wanted to build our boot like that, we could cut the price on our boot, but we're not about that. That's really not what we want to do. So that Encompass boot has the urethane, and then we've put a softer, not too soft, but a softer compound on that Encompass. And what really sets this boot apart from a lot of other boots in this category is the nylon shank in that boot is coated. It's tapered, so it's thicker in the heel. It gets a little narrower in the midfoot, and then it tapers right at the ball. And it's coated. And when it has this fiberglass coating over the top of it, it can flex, but it comes back. So It's resilient. Now, what you'll see with that boot that you have over time, you will always have that toe spring. That toe spring is the distance between the end of the boot and the surface it's resting on, okay? So if you set a boot on a table and it curves up, if you measure that, now, you can pick up a boot out of a box and go, wow, look at all the toe spring, look at all the toe spring. Look at it 6 months from now. It will have lost a ½ inch of toe spring. And the reason it is because that nylon, as you start to use that, flex that straight nylon shank, it's just like plastic clamshell packaging, right? You can't get into it. You don't have a knife. So you start bending it back and forth, it gets stressed. It turns white. That's what happens.
Interesting.
Now,
all right, so that actually begs the next question. So you get these new boots, you follow this, and you're talking spring and checking this out. So there is part of it though where you want to break in your boot, right? You got to get it formed to your feet. And I think of when I was growing up and I played a lot of soccer, and I'd get new cleats. I was just always taught you take a shower with them on, and you kind of wear them around after the shower outside, and they form to your feet. Obviously, not something you're doing with your boots, but when you're helping someone get ready for a hunt, and everybody listening to this should know this: you don't show up to a hunt if you're going elsewhere with new boots that you've never worn before. For whitetail, I mean, it's equally an important thing. But for guys who get these boots and they want to break them in and get them formed to their feet so they're super comfortable and ready to go, what do you recommend?
Well, the first thing is, I think a lot of the break-in is unnecessary if you actually spoke to a professional that understands the different lasts. That's the shape that the boot is built on. So talking to a professional that can ask targeted questions to that person to determine what type of foot they have. Then we help them select the right boot. You do that a lot of times, at least with our boot and the way that we've designed it, people are able to put this boot on and be extremely comfortable in it. I know that sounds. Now I'm not dismissing the fact that someone should put the boot on their foot and familiarize themselves.
Sure, of course.
They familiarize themselves with the locking and the ball bearing hardware for ease of lacing and actually customizing the lacing. But familiarizing yourself with that. I told a guy on a consult today, I said, you just need to put the boots on when you get them. Or you just need to go walk in them. You work in them. If you can work in them, work in them. Go shop. Run to the grocery store. Familiarize. Let your body start to adjust to the platform that we've got built under your feet now.
Yeah.
Huge.
No, it's helpful to know. And one thing that comes to mind, and I know at the beginning you said there's not one boot that will go span the whole hunting season, right?
No, not for whitetail. You can do it. You can the Western stuff. I think you can push it because you are exerting so much energy through your legs.
Sure.
And you're keeping that body core temperature up by hiking and walking, and you've always got food and you're snacking, and there are those situations where those fellows are having to sit on top of a mountain and it's 20 degrees outside and they're glassing for a long period of time. But I've got to say this too. 20 degrees out there glassing. I know they have brutal weather, but 20 degrees here where I'm at, that's brutal.
Yeah, it is.
A metal stand up there just freezing. So, I would tell you, and you probably would agree, I'll push the lace up boot as far as I can just because I believe that protection of the sole and the midsole and just it's much more agile, when you're up
Sure.
on it,
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, it is.
Versus, packing in, with the, whatever your flavor is. I've got lacrosse stuff. That's what we've used for years. But
I've got Cabela's boots that look like Herman Munster boots. They make me finally 6 feet tall. I've always wanted to be 6 feet tall in my life, and with these boots on, I am. And they're ridiculous looking, but man, they're warm.
But then when you get on the platform, you just better be careful because I'm telling you, I've stood on the platform in those big boots before, and it's like you have to turn to look and you're just tiptoeing like this because you're going to step right off the side of it. You really got to watch what you're doing in this. And, we develop systems for the active style. We've got systems for the whitetail guy, the mobile hunting, And then we dip into that 20, 25, 30 degrees first thing in the morning. And, maybe I'm tipping it in November in a insulated lace-up boot. But then when we start hitting that, Thanksgiving time,
your feet get cold. Well, I've found two things that help. I'm not the expert here, but I will say this. I've tried a lot of things to keep my feet warm. So obviously you can go the chemical warmers, the hand warmers stuff. But two things that I've been trying lately that actually have been really good. First is, and this I didn't think this would work, but I tried it. I find a lot of the cold I get is from I'm saddle hunting, so my feet are against the metal platform the entire time. I'll put seat pad, those foam seat pads you can get from Walmart. Cut it down. I'll tape it on when it's cold outside. Having that bit of foam between the metal and your shoe, huge difference.
I believe that.
The other one, and we've talked about it before, I took it from I can't remember who I got it from now, but I have these old wool socks that were just kind of huge and whatever. I cut the tops off and I could just pull them over my boot. And it is ridiculous how a thin layer of wool around a boot can insulate it. So between those two things, I got I got a lot of performance out of the boots that I just like to wear because, like you said, they're lighter, they're just what I'm used to, and I like to not have to change it up too much if possible. I haven't gotten into the boot covers yet. I know that's another option guys will try, and I have not given that a go yet, but I would imagine that probably helps too.
I would think that it would help, but I also think that and it's just like the big boots on a stand. The big over boot. It's one of these things. You better have your A game on and have yourself positioned because there's not going to be any time to be, rubbing that. I can just see rubbing them together and the rest of that. I mean, you got to do what you got to do when it gets that cold. One thing that James and I tell a lot of people that might help some of the listeners here is if you've got somebody that's an excessive sweater, I'm telling you.
Jared's an excessive stress sweater. He's not here to say it, but I promise you, his feet are always wet.
Okay, so he is really, really going to be prone to cold feet, and there's several things that come along with that. So controlling the moisture buildup on the skin is key, and it is something as simple as using like a wipe. You can wipe down the skin with it in between your toes. You do it every day for like a series of 7 days or 10 days. And then you can really monitor it like every third day and just do it during the hunting season. And it's the same ingredient that's in a lot of these underarm antiperspirants. It's like an aluminum chloride, and they just use a little higher percentage of it. A lot of people get freaked out about it. It's not like you're eating this stuff. You're putting them, you've been using it for years. And it's such a little bit that, it's not prescription, it's over the counter. So if you're doing it during hunting season and it keeps you from soaking the inside of the boots, my God, your boots are going to dry out faster. Your boots are going to dry out faster. You're not going to be compressing the socks. So you're going to be getting the loft that trapped air in the sock. If you're saturating that sock, you're just losing all those hairy loops.
Yep.
You have nothing. You just got a damp, wet sock on your foot.
Right? No, and you don't want a damp, wet sock. That's out there. That's awful. It starts uncomfortably hot and it goes from too hot to freezing cold so quick. There's no middle, almost no middle.
You can feel it coming on. You know what it's like. You go out there when it's 15, 20 degrees, and I'll go in and, climb up into my stand and brutal stuff. And I know in my head, this is cold. Like it's 10 degrees outside. I'm talking mega dry air. Like we don't normally have this kind of cold. Like this is seriously cold. You get up there and you put your bow hanger up and you hang your bow and you're like, all right. You put your hand into your little muff and you kind of sit there for a minute. You're like, oh man, my hands are sweating. You kind of pull them out and you're like, I need to monitor this.
Yeah.
I need to monitor. I'm going to go in for a little bit, come out, and just kind of let things start cooling off. And it's kind of like that. You're up and then you're down and then you just, it's like you're timing it. You've got to get this far. And unfortunately, when it's really good like that, you actually, when I hit that late season like that, I try to push it so I don't have to sit there as long because I can't take it, right?
Sure, right.
You just can't take it. But the problem when it gets that good, you can't get there late because they're actually coming out. They'll come out and eat and then go back in. They'll come back out and eat again.
Yeah. You got to be out there. Well, and like with boots, you can't shed a layer. Like if you got, your clothes, like you go in light, you almost try to go in cold and you bulk up when you get out there to let your body warm up rather than try to cool down. And so you don't always have that option with boots because you're not unzipping a layer as you go.
Did you ever try this one? No, I personally haven't. I'll ask you. Did you ever have a situation late season, really cold, that you actually had to walk in a greater distance and stripped off your boots and your socks, wet socks, put new socks on, then put your boots back on and hunted? I've never done it.
I don't
I had
sweat
a buddy
that
that
much.
was doing that. I had a buddy that was doing it. He did it, and I know how far. I know how far he had to walk to get into the stand that he was hunting because I had filled my tags for that year or filled one of them, and it was like I wasn't sweating it any. And I went in with him in a November hunt, and I know how far he had to walk to get in. It's just like the depth of 80 acres almost.
Yeah.
60 acres, something like that. It was a long walk to get back in there. And he was changing out his socks when he got to the base of the stand.
It makes sense. I mean, if you have to, if you get those kind of feet, like, why not? You know, I actually,
he was hunting, the end of December, January, the 1st of January, because
yeah.
Illinois goes, I forget what it is. It goes into January a little bit,
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Some of those spots. Yeah. And that's brutal cold. So you need more on your feet for that. Well, that's awesome. Well, Stephen, we're coming up on time here. I mean, I think we've covered a lot of the basics, and that's what I wanted to get people kind of aware of. These are the things that, when you're thinking about your boots going into the season, how do you maintain them? How do you see if it's time for a change? If it is, how do you pick them out? How do you break them in? And how do you deal with cold weather? So if anybody has any questions, I would actually recommend just reaching out to Stephen. When we first met, it was because that was what I was doing. I kind of reached out to you with some boot questions, and we hit it off. But for anybody who has any questions, go check them out. It's at Lathrop and Sons on Instagram. If you Google it, it's very easy to find, and I found that you guys are incredibly reactive and willing to hop on the phone and help people. Wonderful. All right. Well, thanks again, everybody, and we'll look forward to next week. We've got a really exciting episode on, and some. Actually, I'm not even going to give it away. It's going to be a surprise, but we got a really cool guy we haven't had on the podcast yet coming, so we'll see you then.